On our way home for the new year, my husband Ethan and I encountered an accident. Upon opening our eyes again, we found ourselves back before our relationship began. In our previous life, we were married for 7 years, treating each other with respect, but he refused to have a child with me. Later, I learned his heart always belonged to his first love. After being reborn, I decided to let him go. We quietly unfriended each other on Facebook, kept our distance, and chose different paths in life. 7 years later, he became a top stock trader and announced his engagement to his first love, Vivian, at a class reunion. Seeing me still single, he couldn't resist mocking. "Sylvia, I know in both lives I'm your greatest love, the most impressive man, but you don't have to pine for me." Ignoring him, I took my son's hand. Ethan's face turned pale, his eyes bloodshot as he questioned, "Didn't you say you'd love me forever and only have children with me?" I saw Ethan again at a class reunion 7 years later. Having just completed several surgeries and too exhausted to dress up, I went straight to the banquet hall. Ethan stood in the crowd, arm around Vivian's waist, basking in compliments. "Ethan, you're incredible. In just a few years on Wall Street, you've become the most promising trader, a pride of a city #1 high school." Indeed, I heard Wall Street elites pay to dine with Ethan. His consulting fees alone are nearly hundreds of thousands, equivalent to an ordinary person's annual salary. "Ethan, I've been trading stocks too. I hope you can share some insider tips for old time's sake and help me succeed." Someone in the crowd asked curiously, "Ethan, are you and Vivian getting engaged?" Ethan looked tenderly at Vivian in his arms and said, "Yes, we're getting engaged on December 20th. The crowd erupted in congratulations. An old classmate asked, "Ethan, do you still keep in touch with Sylvia? Your romance was so passionate back then, and I heard your first song was written for her." Hearing my name, I noticed Ethan's smile freeze, his eyes dimming slightly. Standing beside him, Vivian smiled gracefully and replied, "Look at you. Ethan and I are about to get married. Youthful hobbies don't last, nor does young love. He's long moved on from Sylvia." The crowd laughed and continued praising how perfect they were together, but I knew that song was written by Ethan for me when he confessed. In our previous life, we had a campus romance, falling in love at first sight. He once said earnestly, "Sylvia, look into my eyes, I love you, eyes don't lie." I believed him, but sadly, in that life, he lied. With a calm expression, I entered the banquet hall. A sharp-eyed classmate spotted me, saying, "Sylvia, you're finally here. Why are you in casual clothes? Couldn't you change into something formal? You didn't just come from work, did you? Where are you slaving away? We have successful classmates here, let them help you find an easier job." Seeing my attire, many around me mocked me, but I didn't care, smiling and maintaining basic decorum. From the moment I entered the venue, Ethan's gaze never left me. I politely said, "Long time no see." Ethan paused briefly, his eyes unreadable, then sneered, "Sylvia, after all these years, you haven't changed, still so unambitious." Vivian cast a venomous glance at me, deliberately clinging to Ethan's arm and speaking coyly in front of me, as if claiming ownership. "Ethan, how could you say that about an old classmate? She may be struggling, but we shouldn't rub salt in her wounds. Sylvia's had it tough enough." She looked me up and down, sneering, "But Sylvia, what's with this outfit? So mismatched. You're not young anymore, women need to take care of their appearance, or you'll never get married. What man would like a sloppy woman? Want me to lend you some makeup?" As soon as she finished, the classmates burst into laughter. After all, Vivian was dressed in luxury brands, with impeccable makeup down to every strand of hair, exuding the innate elegance of a wealthy heiress. Meanwhile, having just come from the operating room after nearly 24 hours without sleep, I looked utterly exhausted, as if I'd lost my soul. I wore comfortable casual sportswear, no brand, bought from a small street shop, incomparable to her. "No need, thank you," I replied simply, sitting down to eat, as I hadn't eaten all day after intense surgeries. As I sat savoring my meal, Ethan suddenly approached, placing a 100,000 yuan check in front of me. This money is for the sake of our past, I'm helping you. Treat yourself better, get a decent job, buy new clothes, and learn to love yourself. Sylvia, the past is gone, don't dwell on it. If it weren't for you, never mind, it's not important. What matters is that you don't lose your drive and give up on life because I left, okay? Confused, I looked up at Ethan, curious about his unfinished sentence. What had I done in our past life to make him abandon me so decisively after rebirth? In our previous life, we went from school uniforms to wedding vows. He had his music dreams, and I wanted to study medicine, both costly and demanding pursuits, so one of us had to sacrifice. Because I loved him, I gave up opportunities for graduate and doctoral studies in medicine, starting work early to support both our dreams with my income. He failed repeatedly, grew frustrated, and became despondent, while I, like an ever-reliable power source, patiently comforted him despite my own exhaustion after work. I thought he'd understand my love, but when I refused to buy a new guitar due to financial constraints, he smashed it in a fit of rage. You know what? If I'd listened to Vivian and studied abroad in the US, I wouldn't be living this miserable life. I really regret being with you. Later, he stopped playing the guitar and lost his dreams, while I often cried at night over his words, I really regret being with you. Still, I made one last effort, holding him and whispering, Ethan, I want to have your child. He pushed me away, his eyes filled with disgust, saying, in our financial situation, can we afford a child? I told you before, I hate kids. I don't want a child with you. Those words shattered my last hopes. During the new year, a truck collision ended our lives, and in that moment, I felt no fear, only relief. Now reborn, we chose to keep our distance, with no need to cling to past feelings. I quietly pushed the check back, saying, no need, I don't accept things from strangers, thank you. He frowned and questioned, Sylvia, am I a stranger? What do you mean? I replied, I can buy my own clothes, whatever my job is now, I find it respectable and not shameful, nor do I think I'm giving up on myself. Keep this money for someone who needs it. He stood there, lips tightly pressed, holding the check. Vivian approached him, glanced at the check, and seemed to understand something. Though anger flashed in her eyes, she maintained a gentle facade, saying, Sylvia, you don't want our kindness? Then we'll offer something more practical. I recently opened a nail salon on Qingfu Avenue, come over, and I'll arrange for you to be a nail technician apprentice. 6,000 yuan a month, not much, but you'll learn skills, so even if you're desperate later, you could open your own salon. Interested? It's surely more respectable than your current job. I calmly continued eating and declined their offer, saying, thank you for your kindness, but I'm satisfied with my job and have no plans to change it. Some classmates shouted at me, Sylvia, why are you so ungrateful? Ethan and Vivian are kind, offering you money and a job, take it. Exactly, you're in such a sorry state, why cling to pride? Coming to the reunion looking so pathetic, aren't you just here to network? Stop pretending. Vivian hypocritically chimed in, don't say that, everyone. Maybe Sylvia really loves her current job. Turning to me, she said, Sylvia, this is our kindness, offered for old time's sake. Don't miss this opportunity for the sake of pride. I couldn't understand their insistence on forcing money and jobs on me and said, I really don't need it, thank you. Vivian still smiled gently, but her eyes were full of mockery and disdain. Ethan clenched the check and sneered, a hopeless case, indeed, can't even help you up. Stay poor forever. After this taunt, several former male classmates crowded over, trying to force me to drink, saying, Sylvia, you look so pitiful, now drink this, and I'll transfer you 1,000. If you're really desperate, I'll add more. The men's gazes were lewd, and the classmates laughed without anyone helping me. I frowned, feeling this reunion was far from what I'd imagined. If I weren't waiting for someone, I would have left in disgust. Just as I was about to call security, Ethan, standing nearby, stubbed out his cigarette and grabbed the arm of the man harassing me. his eyes icy and furious, saying, "Behave." The man yelped in pain as his arm was gripped tightly. Vivian tugged at Ethan's sleeve, exclaiming, "Ethan, what are you doing?" His face remained cold as he replied, "Doing what's right. This is a reunion, not a place for you to act crazy." With that, he let go of the man, who didn't dare confront him but glared at me viciously. I couldn't help but look at Ethan, surprised he'd helped me. Vivian gritted her teeth but smiled, saying, "I heard the young heir and CEO of Tsinghua Enterprises are in a meeting upstairs. Maybe we'll get lucky and see a city's richest man." The classmates grew excited at the news. A city's richest man, handsome and wealthy, was said to be in his early 30s with a 5-year-old child, but his wife had never been publicly revealed. Does that mean we might see his wife today? I have to post on Facebook. This is exclusive news. Soon, a group of bodyguards escorted a young boy into the banquet hall, and the crowd grew thrilled, saying, "With this entourage, that must be the young heir of a city's richest man. He's truly a fine-looking boy." The male classmate who'd harassed me, despite being hit, had no complaints but ranted at me, "Sylvia, if not for Vivian, a lowly worker like you would never see the young prince of a city's richest man. If I were you, I'd kneel and thank her. Maybe you'd get a good job and even marry someone like me, earning $6,000 a month." Ridiculous. I ignored him, calmly looking toward the young boy. Everyone fawned over him, eagerly taking photos and videos with their phones. Even the haughty Vivian approached the boy with a friendly, almost sycophantic smile, saying, "Little one, want anything to eat? Auntie will pay for it." As she spoke, she tried to pinch the boy's cheek, but to everyone's surprise, the boy, surrounded by bodyguards, ignored the adults and walked straight to me, smiling sweetly and throwing himself into my arms, saying, "Mommy, you're finally here." The boy, previously cold-faced, looked aggrieved upon seeing me, saying, "Why didn't you come home yesterday? I missed you so much, Mommy." Looking at my son running to me, I hugged him and softly comforted him. "Mommy was working. I told you yesterday when I left for work. Tomorrow, Mommy has a day off. Shall we go have fun?" My darling son Lucas nodded eagerly, "Okay. Mommy's the best." Everyone at the reunion was stunned, staring at me in disbelief. As the classmates were about to speak, a handsome man in a suit rushed down from the upstairs meeting room, saying, "Honey, the hotel manager told me you were here for the reunion. Why didn't you tell me you were done with work so I could pick you up?" The hotel manager stood aside, introducing to the stunned crowd, "This is Gabriel, CEO of Tsinghua Group and Sylvia's husband. Feel free to let me know any requests during your meal, and we'll do our best to ensure a great experience for Sylvia's old classmates, as a courtesy." At that moment, the classmates' expressions varied. Some were thrilled, while those who had mocked me turned deathly pale. A few female classmates I was close to couldn't help but ask, "Sylvia, is your husband really Gabriel, the richest man in a city? Isn't it obvious?" The hotel manager called her Mrs. Sylvia, and the young boy called her Mommy. She must be the never-before-seen wife of the richest man. Wow, that's true nobility. Facing the classmates' chatter, I could only smile in response. Gabriel, standing nearby, looked at my attire with concern, pulling me into his arms and saying, "Just back from the hospital? Rest well at home after the reunion." I nodded, saying, "Okay." Then, this seemingly cold man ignored Vivian, who was trying to approach, and fixed his gaze on Ethan, speaking with slight disdain. "You're my wife's ex, right? Thank you for not marrying her back then. If not for your decision, how could I have met such a wonderful wife?" Facing Gabriel's sarcasm, Ethan ignored him, instead looking at me with a complex expression, a hint of breakdown in his eyes, and questioned, "Sylvia, is this your way of punishing me? How much did you pay for these two actors?" I set my son down and took Gabriel's hand, saying, "This is my husband, Gabriel." His expression shifted from disbelief to shock, then to pallor, and finally to a lifeless silence. Perhaps the old me would have cared about his every move, but he was right. The past is gone, so why dwell on it? I have a new love, a child, my dream job, and the happy marriage and family I couldn't have in my past life. By all accounts, I'm happier in this life. Vivian had organized this reunion, but after my identity was revealed, everyone's attitude toward me changed from fawning over Vivian to warmly greeting me, all in just a few minutes. Who'd have thought Sylvia married the richest man? Ethan just tried to dismiss her with a check. How laughable now. Yeah, he thought his ex was doing poorly, but she turned around and found a far better man. Didn't Vivian try to recommend a nail technician job? I just heard Sylvia is a chief surgeon at a city's top hospital. She's incredible. Why would she need a job referral? That's ridiculous. Sylvia, how could you not tell your old classmates about such a big event like your marriage? We could have given you a big red envelope. Watching my former classmates, who had initially ignored me, now trying to cozy up, I found it laughable but still maintained polite pleasantries for appearance's sake. The reunion wasn't even over, but I'd lost interest, so Gabriel and I, holding our son, turned to leave. Just as we stepped out of Tsinghua Hotel, Ethan chased after me, shouting, "Sylvia!" I asked Gabriel to take our son to the car to wait. As November nights were chilly, Gabriel said nothing, nodding silently, respecting and trusting me as always. Ethan looked at me with complex and confused emotions, asking, "How could you marry Gabriel?" There was no need to hide it. When Gabriel's mother was hospitalized for heart disease at our hospital, I was her attending physician, and our frequent discussions about her condition led to our acquaintance. He admired my dedication to every patient and my high pursuit of professional and academic excellence, so Gabriel decisively began pursuing me. I noticed his filial devotion to his mother, which gave me a good impression of him. On the day Gabriel formally confessed, I asked him, "Do you want children?" "I want children." I could say pretty words about respecting your wishes, but I want to answer honestly. I want kids, and my dream is a happy family of 3. Expressionless, I continued, "Will you stop me from pursuing medical research?" He shook his head sincerely, saying, "No, a person's true energy isn't only in family but also in society and self. I'll support everything you want to do. One last question, will you regret it?" He smiled. Gabriel, never regret. That day, I agreed to give it a try, wanting to give both him and myself a fresh start. We naturally fell in love and married. The wedding was low-key, just a simple registration with close relatives and friends invited. After my story, Ethan's eyes unknowingly reddened. "Is that little boy really your child? But didn't you say you only wanted to have children with me? How could you have a child with another man?" His words left me speechless, so I reminded him with his own, "Ethan, the past is gone. Don't dwell on it, okay? Promises from our past life don't need to be taken seriously in this one. When we mutually agreed to part ways, both in our past life and this one, isn't it best to have no contact? Besides, in our past life, you regretted being with me and didn't want children with me, and I couldn't accept that life." Ethan shouted angrily, "I regretted it because you never supported me. You sent emails to music publishers telling them not to accept my songs." Hearing this, I was utterly confused, saying, "What are you talking about? I don't understand." "I never sent any emails. Back then, I worked 3 jobs a day for your music dreams. I had no time for such nonsense, and I wanted your success more than anyone. Didn't you feel that in our past life?" My words hit like a bolt from the blue. Ethan stood stunned, as if struck by a massive blow. He instinctively covered his mouth, unable to accept the truth, and continued questioning, "Then why didn't you want to buy me a guitar back then?" At that moment, I began to understand what Ethan's unfinished sentence at the reunion meant. "Did you think we had any money left? Your father was ill, and we gave nearly all our savings to the hospital. Besides grocery money, what did we have? Should I have stolen a guitar?" Ethan was utterly despairing, muttering, "Impossible. Vivian told me you sent those emails to the publishers, so I kept failing because you didn't want me to succeed, fearing I'd abandon you." If our past life's events made me feel disappointed and pained, at this moment, I felt complete despair about that past relationship. We were together for so many years, yet a single word from someone else could negate all my efforts. Don't you find yourself ridiculous? I sighed. My husband and son are waiting for me. I'm leaving. Ethan anxiously called after me, Sylvia, do you still love me? I firmly shook my head, saying, the love from our past life is long gone. I now love my husband and son more. I didn't understand why he asked that, especially since he'd said there was no need to dwell on past people or events, and I had truly let go. Unexpectedly, just a month later, Vivian's father, Patrick, made headlines for tax evasion, using substandard materials in commercial housing, falsifying data, and bribing local officials. I was quite shocked to learn this. Vivian, once a lofty heiress, appeared utterly destitute in front of the cameras. Not only were all her assets seized by the court, but she couldn't even return home, and her father, facing multiple charges, would likely never leave prison. Beyond their family, the real victims were ordinary people who spent their life savings on homes, only to receive shoddy constructions. Upon hearing this news, I couldn't help but sigh. That's outrageous, doing business without a conscience. Gabriel, looking aggrieved, said, honey, don't lump me in, I have a conscience. I smiled. Gabriel always insisted on making the most cost-effective products, using the best materials for his products. Hotels and real estate sold at the lowest prices, which is why his company grew bigger and more renowned. If you respect consumers, they'll reward you, but people like Vivian's father, who cut corners to profit while endangering lives, are utterly unconscionable. Soon after, I received a call from an unknown number. After hesitating, I answered, and Ethan's voice came through, saying, did you see the news, Sylvia? I reported it. I frowned, not understanding why he told me this, and said, then I thank you on behalf of the public. Ethan's voice sounded weak. Sylvia, can I see you one more time? I responded sternly, I've said before, I've moved on, and you don't need to. My words were cut off by his coughing. Cough, cough. Ethan gave a bitter laugh and continued, I got checked at the hospital a few days ago, late-stage lung cancer. Sylvia, can we meet? The news hit me like a sudden snap in my mind. After a long silence, I hoarsely said, bring your medical report to my hospital. That afternoon, Ethan entered my office, looking much thinner, and placed his medical report on my desk. I quickly reviewed his report, frowning, you'd better get admitted soon and cooperate with the doctors for treatment. I had no cases at the moment, so I accompanied him to complete the admission procedures until everything was settled. Ethan's eyes were red, looking at me pleadingly. Sylvia, I knew you wouldn't abandon me. You still have feelings for me, right? I know I misunderstood you before. It was all my fault. You were so good to me in our past life, and I treated you that way. I've realized now I don't regret being with you at all. Sylvia, I know I was wrong. Can you forgive me and let us start over? We could have our own child. Didn't you always want a child with me? I frowned at him, saying, Ethan, I hope you understand we ended things completely the moment we were reborn. I have a new family and my own child now. Please stop saying these things. Ethan shook his head in disbelief. You must still have feelings for me. Why else would you help me so much? How could years of love just vanish? You're just angry with me. Can't you stop being mad? I've admitted my mistakes. I gave a cold smile, shaking off his hand. Because we had years of history, I helped you when you were diagnosed with lung cancer. If my actions caused a misunderstanding, I'm truly sorry. You can contact your parents to care for you. Also, marrying you in my past life was my biggest regret. I no longer love you and don't want a child with you. Please don't live in the past, a past I don't want to return to. After saying this, Ethan stood frozen, his face full of pain, but I didn't care and turned to leave the hospital room. Ethan shouted after me, all men are the same. Do you think Gabriel really loves you? Why would a city's richest man fall for an ordinary person like you? Wake up, you can't be happy with him. I'm the one who's right for you. Annoyed by his words, I walked away faster. He hadn't changed from our past life. When doing well, he looked down on those worse off. When doing poorly, He envied those better off, even trying to drag others down with him, always regretting, never satisfied. Everyone thought I was reaching above my station by marrying Gabriel, but I felt we were equals in this love. Ethan saw me as just an ordinary doctor, unaware of my groundbreaking medical research and achievements. Gabriel, however, was willing to truly know me. He once gently held me, whispering, "Honey, your research saves lives, something money can't do. You're the real superhero." Because of Gabriel, I understood true love, not one taking and the other giving, but two people striving for their dreams together, supporting each other. I wouldn't doubt our bond over Ethan's provocations. Ethan hadn't given up. That day, he appeared in my office with a guitar, playing the song he used to confess to me, "Look into my eyes, they don't lie." The familiar melody played, but I felt no emotion, only deep irritation. The song was ironic, as he lied to me nearly every day after our marriage. I sternly told him to leave. He grabbed my hand, saying, "Sylvia, I really regret it, I do. I don't want to break up, it's all my fault for not cherishing you, please forgive me." I looked at him coldly. Was I not clear last time? Being with you was my biggest regret. Do you know what I'm most grateful for? A glimmer of hope flashed in his eyes, but my next words extinguished it. That we didn't have a child, that's the only gift fate gave me. Please stop bothering me. Ethan's parents arrived in time, taking him back to his room. They apologized sincerely. "We're sorry our son is ill and has done things that affected you, but Sylvia, is there really no chance for you too?" Looking at my kind in-laws from our past life, I said earnestly, "Auntie, uncle, I'm married with a husband and son. Even if I weren't, I couldn't be with Ethan. I don't love him anymore. I hope he actively undergoes treatment and stops contacting me." The two elders nodded apologetically. Soon after, Ethan transferred hospitals and never contacted me again. I heard about Ethan again when his mother called, saying, "Sylvia, Ethan is nearing the end and wants to see you, can you come?" I was silent for a long time before hoarsely replying, "Okay," and hung up. In that moment, I tried to recall the moments of our past life's love, but I couldn't remember anything. Time truly erases everything. When I saw Ethan again, he was emaciated, his cheekbones protruding, unrecognizable. His eyes stared blankly out the window until I entered, when they suddenly lit up. He looked at his body, giving a self-deprecating smile. "Sylvia, I must look terrible now, right?" I didn't respond. He continued, "I'm sorry, I was too insecure back then. I chased my music dreams but faced only failure, and unable to cope, I blamed you for everything. Maybe this is my retribution. Sylvia, if we could have another chance, if I treated you well this time, would you choose me?" Looking at his hopeful, shining eyes, I cut off his fantasy. "No, life doesn't offer so many do-overs. And Ethan, you won't change, you'll never be satisfied. A person who's never satisfied, no matter how many times life restarts, will never achieve the happiness they desire." Ethan looked at me, tears of regret streaming down. "Is there really no chance? I truly know I was wrong." I firmly gave him a negative answer. "There's no chance." After leaving, I never went back to see him, as I cherished what I have now. Regarding my research, the dean recommended me for an international study exchange opportunity. Upon arriving in the US, I found Gabriel and our child waiting at the airport. He approached with flowers, and my eyes filled with surprise. Gabriel hugged me, saying, "Surprised? My wife's here to study, and we're here to support you. Happy?" I nodded, so happy, such a surprise. During the exchange, we visited many US attractions, creating wonderful memories. During the trip, I learned of Ethan's passing, feeling a sense of melancholy. But turning around, I saw two figures, one big and one small, running toward me. I opened my arms, embracing my future.